Today, Nally Elementary would like to recognize all of our February Leaders of the Month. We are so proud of these students for their outstanding leadership in the classroom, on the playground, in the lunchroom, and also always displaying the 7 habits at Nally School. Today, I will recognize each student in each grade level and tell you a little something about them. Okay, starting off in kindergarten, in Mrs. Craig's room, we have Jackson Wright. Jackson is proactive, begins with the end in mind, puts first things first, thinks when, and synergizes. Mrs. Craig said Jackson has been a wonderful listener and helper since school has started. He is trustworthy and honest. Mrs. Craig said I can count on him to be a kind leader and to run messages while out and about. Jackson has a wonderful work ethic as well. He tries his best every day. Mrs. Craig said, I appreciate his efforts, leadership, and helpfulness each day. Way to go, Jackson. In Mrs. Parton's room, we have Brooklyn Hill. Brooklyn is proactive. Brooklyn has grown in so many ways this year. Mrs. Parton said, I am so proud of how positive she is when her friends do well, and she is uplifting when they feel sad. Brooklyn and I set a goal to be more positive when things work out differently than we planned. She continues to plan through with a positive mindset. Way to go, Brooklyn. In Mrs. Rankin's room, we have Emmett Boyd, who puts first things first. Emmett is a joy to have in class. He puts first things first and leads by example. He comes across shy and reserved, but he is a good balance of having fun. Keep shining for all to see, Emmett. Congratulations. Finn Adams is in Mrs. Zukowski's class, who is proactive. Finn is a leader because he proactively chooses kindness even when no one is looking. He helps his friends when unpacking the cubbies, he cleans up messes that aren't his, and he includes all members of our class. Keep making Nolly a better place by spreading kindness, Finn. Okay, moving on to first grade. In Mrs. Beard's class, we have Cooper Snyder. Cooper puts first things first and synergizes. Cooper has been doing a wonderful job putting first things first by working hard during win time. He is always working quietly during independent work, and he is a rock star when he reads with his group. Way to go, Cooper. In Mrs. Bowser's room, we have Micah Young. Micah demonstrates all of the 7 habits. Mrs. Bowser said Micah is a diligent and responsible student. He sets a goal to improve his handwriting, and he has been working hard to achieve it. Way to go, Micah. In Miss Nagy's room, we have Sienna Crine, who puts first things first, begins with the end in mind, and thinks win-win. Sienna is a hardworking student who puts a lot of thought into everything she does. She's very careful to always do her best work. Sienna is also a good friend and has a big heart. In Mrs. Rector's room, we have Addison Knox, who demonstrates all 7 habits. Addison Knox is receiving this award for exhibiting all habits. Addison goes above and beyond in all that she does. Addison is a kind girl to her friends. She is a hard worker and leads by example. Congratulations, Addison. Okay, in second grade, our first student is Steele Vincent in Mrs. Grandin's room. Steele Vincent is being recognized for synergizing. No matter who Steele sits next to, he will treat them with kindness and be a friend. What a spark of joy each day. He is also an incredible brother to his little sister. In Mrs. Slimak's room, we have Oliver Kemp, who synergizes and thinks win-win. Ollie is a joy to have in class. He's an amazing team member and synergizes with all of his peers. He also has a win-win attitude and understands the importance of working together. Keep up the amazing work, Ollie. In Mrs. Truax's room, we have Quinn McConnell. Quinn shows kindness and consideration to classmates, teachers, and school rules. She also understands and appreciates the feelings of others. She maintains a positive attitude and encourages others to stay motivated. Quinn is a valuable member of our classroom and our school community. And in Mrs. Van Dorsten's room, we have Charlotte Bile, who puts first things first. Charlotte is a smart, fun-loving, and friendly little girl who is always smiling. She's always responsible when making sure any absent work is done before recess. She is a fine example for our class. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, moving on to third grade. Our first student is Mila Lamp in Mrs. Braley's room, who is proactive. Mila is new to Nolly and already a leader in third grade. She is always striving to do her best, proactively completes her work, and has a positive attitude towards learning. Mila, you are off to a great start at Nolly. Keep being a leader. In Mrs. Esterly's room, we have Henley Carr, who is proactive. Henley is a silent leader in class. Henley always helps everyone around her as well as her teacher. She has a strong work ethic and sets a great example for having integrity. Way to go, Henley. In Mrs. Stasnis's room, we have Nikolai Simonson, who seeks first to understand. Nikolai was chosen by the whole class this month for habit number 5, seeks first to understand. He has an exceptional ability to think of others and be a problem solver. He truly cares about his friends and teachers. Nikolai goes out of his way to be helpful and kind and is noticed by his friends. Keep it up, Nikolai. In Mr. Straub's room, we have Sydney Jellison, who puts first things first. Mr. Straub said, I have really noticed a big difference in Sydney's work ethic since the beginning of the school year. She is working harder to complete her homework correctly in a timely fashion. She is working more thoughtfully, and it is showing. Keep up the hard work. It will get easier in the long run. Way to go, Sydney. All right, moving on to 4th grade. This student was nominated by Miss Gardner and Miss Edwards. It is Ayla Ramirez, who begins with the end in mind. Ayla has a great attitude about school. During instruction and independent work time, she shows grit by never giving up. We are proud of you, Ayla. Keep up the good work. In Mrs. Matson's room, we have Aria Burkhart, who synergizes. Aria is an all-around good leader. She works well with others and is such a good helper in class. When she has a job, I can count on her to remember to do it without being asked. She is kind and gets along with everyone. Keep being a good leader, Aria. In Mrs. Oakes' room, we have Ryder Sponseller, who puts first things first. Not only does Ryder exemplify strong character every day, but he also does it when he's absent. He recently took a pretty big trip and asked for all of his makeup work beforehand. When he returned without any reminders from me, he turned it all in and all of his work into his teachers. It was done, and it was done very well. Mrs. Oakes said, I am very proud of Ryder's strong work ethic. In Mrs. Toth's room, we have Lincoln Cottrell, who puts first things first. Lincoln is a top-notch 4th grader. He always puts first things first. He is ready and willing to help whenever needed. Thanks, Lincoln, for giving your best effort always. Okay, moving on to 5th grade. Our first student is in Mrs. Adamson's class, and it is Emerson Boyd. Emerson worked diligently this grading period, showing pride in her schoolwork and improving in all subjects. She prioritized her tasks by putting first things first and even completed extra credit assignments to boost her grades. Great job, Emerson, and keep up that hard work. In Mrs. Bellis's class, I have Camilla Spagnardi. Millie is a great leader. She begins with the end in mind daily. She works hard to complete her work and puts first things first. She is also an amazing help to Mrs. Bellis at the end of the school day. She's always offering to clean and put things away. Millie is such a joy to have in class. Mrs. Bellis said, I look forward to seeing her bright smiling face every single day. In Mrs. Demrowski's room, we have Calvin Kemp, who synergizes. Calvin Kemp is being nominated for habit number 6, synergizing. Calvin does a great group work in class and recently worked hard to prepare with other students for a holiday house presentation at the Board of Education meeting. Calvin is kind, respectful, helpful, and a team player. He is such a great student. Keep up the great work, Calvin. And in Mrs. Sewell's class, we have Chase Essenberg, who puts first things first. Chase has worked so hard to be the best he can in class. He prioritizes his work and social life to be a good all-around guy. Way to go, Chase. Congratulations to all of the Nolly Leaders of the Month. The entire staff here at Nolly is so proud of you. Please keep up the great work and your outstanding leadership. Way to go.